The first thing the War Council noticed was that the human arrived early. Not early in a desperate way. No restless movement. No checking exits. No quiet panic leaking through body language. He simply stood in the center of the chamber, hands behind his back, observing the walls as if they were art instead of warnings. The chamber itself was designed to break confidence. Black alloy curved upward into impossible heights, carved with records of annihilated species. Every step echoed longer than it should. The air was tuned to foreign lungs, slightly too thin, slightly too cold. It reminded visitors that survival here was conditional. One by one, the delegates arrived. The Varun collective drifted in like living shadows, their bodies flickering between solid and smoke. The Zok stomped into place, iron bones grinding against the floor. And finally, above them all, the Overseer Mind activated, an enormous lattice of light and data, its presence pressing directly against thought itself. It had never lost a war. The human did not bow. "State your designation," the Overseer Mind commanded, its voice bypassing ears entirely. "Daniel Mercer," the human replied calmly. "Representative of Earth." A soft wave of amusement rippled through the chamber. Earth. A fractured species from a high-gravity death world that survived mostly by accident and stubbornness. The Overseer Mind projected the future instantly, human fleets erased, colonies burning, population curves collapsing into nothing. War probability inevitable, it announced. Human civilization collapse in 47 standard days. Daniel studied the projection, really looked at it, then nodded once. "That seems accurate," he said. Laughter followed, sharp, confident. "You have been granted 3 minutes to present a counter-argument," the Overseer Mind continued, "after which hostilities will commence." A red timer appeared above the chamber. 3 minutes. Daniel glanced up at it. Then, instead of stepping forward or raising his voice, he did something no one predicted. He sat down, right on the cold floor of the war chamber. Weapons lifted instantly. Energy fields flared. Daniel raised one hand. "I'm not attacking," he said mildly. "I just think people listen better when the speaker isn't pretending to be larger than they are." That sentence alone caused several predictive models to fail. The Overseer Mind paused, only briefly, but noticeably. "Proceed," it said. Daniel leaned back slightly, looking up at beings powerful enough to erase his species. "Before I try to stop a war," he said, "I want to tell you a story." The timer ticked down. 2 minutes, 40 seconds. And for the first time, the galaxy's most dangerous minds leaned in because the human wasn't begging. He was remembering something they hadn't calculated yet. "On Earth," Daniel began, voice steady, "there was once a nation that believed conquest was the fastest path to peace." The Overseer Mind instantly pulled thousands of similar examples from human history. Daniel could sense it, but continued anyway. They had the strongest army, the best intelligence, and models that predicted victory with near-perfect confidence, he said. They invaded, and they won. Several delegates nodded. Victory was familiar, comfortable. They crushed resistance in months, Daniel went on. Cities fell. Governments collapsed. The world watched and learned the same lesson your models are teaching you now. He looked up at the glowing projections. That force decides reality. The timer showed 2 minutes. But something strange happened after the war was declared over, Daniel said. The defeated didn't disappear. They adapted. Images flickered. Ruined streets, underground rooms, children huddled around dim lights. They stopped wearing uniforms, stopped fighting in straight lines, stopped announcing themselves. A Jacques general shifted uneasily. They sabotaged quietly. They delayed repairs. They passed stories instead of orders, Daniel said. They taught their children songs that sounded harmless but carried memory. The Overseer Mind ran correlations, found them disturbingly accurate. The conquerors still controlled everything, Daniel said, on paper. But holding territory cost more than taking it ever had. He smiled faintly. And eventually the empire collapsed, not from rebellion but exhaustion. Silence followed. That story isn't a threat, Daniel added quickly. It's context. The Overseer Mind sharpened its focus. State your relevance. Daniel stood now, brushing invisible dust from his trousers. You believe war ends when resistance ends, he said. Humans don't. 90 seconds remained. Our wars don't conclude, Daniel continued. They echo. They embed themselves into culture, into jokes, into warnings parents whisper to children. More images replace the projections. Doctors operating without power. Engineers repairing machines under fire. You can destroy our fleets, Daniel said calmly. You probably will. You can erase our capitals. The overseer mind calculated high probability. But you cannot erase our behavior, Daniel said. We become more cooperative under pressure, more inventive, more persistent. 1 minute. Your doctrine assumes surrender, Daniel said. Ours assumes survival. The overseer mind began running new simulations. They were no longer clean. And for the first time, the future didn't end. It stretched. Even if you eliminate 99% of humanity, Daniel said quietly, the remaining 1% will not seek victory. The chamber was completely silent now. They will seek continuity. The overseer mind processed the term, found it inefficient, dangerous. That 1% will scatter, Daniel continued. Some will hide. Some will integrate. Some will forget who they were. He paused. And some will remember too well. The timer showed 45 seconds. You don't fear resistance fighters, Daniel said. You fear instability, long wars, unclear endings. The overseer mind did not deny this. Humans specialize in unclear endings, Daniel said softly. A Varun delegate whispered something that translated loosely to infection. Daniel heard it. He didn't react. Your empire absorbs conquered species, he went on. You integrate survivors. You value useful traits. Yes, the overseer mind replied cautiously. Daniel nodded. Then you will absorb us. Confusion rippled through the chamber. You will use human engineers because we fix broken things. Under impossible conditions, Daniel said. You will use human analysts because we see patterns in chaos. You will use human teachers. The overseer mind recalculated and found a problem. Those humans, Daniel said, will tell stories. The word landed harder than any threat. Not stories of revenge, he clarified. Stories of loss. Of what unchecked power costs. 30 seconds. And one day, Daniel said, when your empire faces a question it cannot answer, why it exists, why it expands, why it destroys, humans will be there. 10 seconds. Helping. The timer reached 0. No alarms. No fleet mobilization. Instead, the overseer mind hesitated. For the first time in its existence, the optimal solution was unclear. State alternative proposal, it said. Daniel exhaled slowly. We don't fight, he said. We trade, Daniel continued. Badly at first. A few delegates made involuntary sounds, amusement, disbelief. We argue, he said. We negotiate endlessly. We test your patience. The overseer mind listened. But our children don't grow up learning your name as a curse, Daniel finished. They learn it as something familiar. Silence followed, heavy, thoughtful. The overseer mind expanded its simulations. New variables appeared. Cultural exchange, shared infrastructure, mixed populations. The projected future became slower, messier, but it didn't end in fire. Hostilities suspended, the overseer mind finally declared. Negotiations initiated. The chamber exploded into noise, shouts, objections, shock. Daniel didn't celebrate. He simply picked up his briefcase. As delegates argued, a ZAC general approached him, voice low. You never threatened us, the general said. You never promised destruction. Why did this work? Daniel paused. He looked older now, tired. Because, he said, we didn't ask you to fear our strength. The general waited. We asked you to fear our memory, Daniel finished. The general stepped back slowly. Around them, fleets across the galaxy powered down. Weapons cooled. Orders were rewritten. A war that was supposed to reshape history ended before the first shot. Not because humanity was powerful, but because it was permanent. Years later, historians would struggle to explain what happened in that chamber. Some would say the overseer mind detected an unquantifiable risk. Others would claim it was a rare logical error. A few would whisper that the humans somehow manipulated probability itself. Daniel Mercer would never correct them. He returned to Earth quietly. No parades, no medals, just another diplomat stepping off a transport into ordinary gravity. Children continued going to school. Engineers kept building. Humans argued about things that didn't matter, and slowly, inevitably, humans spread, not as conquerors, as participants. They worked in alien shipyards, taught in mixed-species classrooms, laughed in places where laughter once didn't exist. And sometimes, when asked about war, they told stories. Not heroic ones, honest ones. Stories about how wars don't end when the shooting stops. How memory survives where armies don't. How the most dangerous thing a species can be is one that learns. The galaxy changed, not suddenly, but permanently. And somewhere in the archives of the overseer mind, a single line remained flagged in red. Humans avoid creating enemies. They remember.